So I just want to welcome each of you. We had a great time at our last session on May 21st, and I'm so glad you're able to join me on this second opportunity to experience the flash technique. Before we continue, I invite you to take a moment to center yourself. This is always an important thing for me. And so I want you to just take a moment to feel your feet flat on the floor and to let go of whatever distractions might be in your mind. So I have a little breathing exercise to help you to get present here in this virtual space together. And it's 6-2-8 breathing. And so if it's comfortable for you, we'll breathe in for a count of 6, hold for a count of 2, and then exhale for a count of 8. So the emphasis is on having a longer exhale than inhale. So let's do 3 sets of these together now. Okay, great. Hello, we just did a little breathing exercise. Kelly, welcome. Nice to see you. And so, yeah. So I'll start by introducing myself. So I'm Brad Galvin, and I'm an EMDR trained therapist in Seattle. And I've been trained in Roy Kiesling's EMDR consulting method. Hi, Seema. And in Roy's approach, they teach the use of EMD, EMD-r, and then full EMDR. So they use both contained and unrestricted processing. And I've also completed Laurel Parnell's level 3 training in attachment-focused EMDR. So I love both of those trainings, and both have informed how I approach my work with clients, which is very strong on resourcing. So I often say if I had to choose between doing the EMDR processing or doing the resourcing, I would choose the resourcing. And I like it because it's so universal. So I'd also like to acknowledge Francine Shapiro, who developed EMDR in the late 80s. And she helped to change so many people's lives for the better, including mine. And obviously she died around a year ago. So just sending good energy in her direction for all the good that she's done for humanity, honestly. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, a substance use disorder professional, and what's called a level 2 national certified gambling counselor. After working for about a decade for different Coast Salish tribal communities in Western Washington, I started my own practice called Brief Therapy Works. I do week-long intensive therapy retreats where I use EMDR to treat addictions and trauma in downtown Seattle. So clients typically stay across the street from my office at the Westin because it has a fitness center and a pool. And this is great because exercise is so important as a way to facilitate trauma and addiction-related processing. And that's something, for example, that Bessel van der Kolk talks about in A Body Keeps the Score, just the importance of those kind of physical activities for processing. I'm really excited to get to share the flash technique with you today. As you may know, it was created in 2017 by Dr. Phil Manfield as a way to quickly reduce the emotional intensity of traumatic memories. And it's considered to be part of phase 2, the preparation phase of EMDR processing, but it can be used independent of whether you ultimately choose to process traumatic memories using phases 3 to 7. Today's session will give you an opportunity to experience the flash technique for yourself. If you're intrigued and want to do more, I highly suggest you do a webinar with Dr. Manfield. So he offers both a 6-hour basic training and a 3-hour advanced training. And I've done both. And for me, the basic training really stands out as exceptional, which is convenient since it's the first training. So I want to mention a few boundaries around today's session. So I won't be providing psychotherapy today, and this session doesn't create a therapist-client relationship between myself and each of you. However, I'd be happy to refer you to a therapist after our session if you would like. Likewise, if you're uncertain whether you can think of a disturbing memory, then set it aside without getting overwhelmed, I also suggest you don't participate. There is some risk that you may become upset. That said, the magic of the flash technique is that it doesn't require re-experiencing of a trauma in order to lessen the trauma's impact. It's intended to give you a taste of the benefits of EMDR therapy without delving into the traumatic memory. So for this reason, it's one of my favorite tools. Okay, let's get started. So I'd like for you to choose a traumatic memory, not feel it or go into it in any detail. I don't even need to know what it is, and we won't be talking about it. Just choose something you've experienced that's a trauma and it meets these criteria. So first, it happened after the age of 3, but it didn't just happen. So not a very early or very recent traumatic memory. Second, you can clearly remember it. Third, it happened only once. And finally, and this is related to it happened only once, is that it doesn't have a feeder memory. So a feeder memory is a previous memory that's at least as strong as the current memory, with the same theme, same body sensations, and same negative thoughts attached to it. So for example, failing out of school in the 10th grade would be a feeder memory for being fired from a job last year because it happened before the current memory, has the same theme of failure, the same body sensations of a sinking feeling in the chest, and the same negative thought of I'll never be good enough. If you're unsure whether the memory you chose has a feeder memory, you'll want to choose a different memory. So some examples of traumatic memories you might choose include a car accident, an assault or violence, a failure of some kind, a rejection, as long as there's no feeder memory for it, a nightmare, an incident involving intense shame, a move from home, an abortion, a job loss. So take a few moments to choose a memory now if you haven't already. And I'd like for you to rate the level of disturbance that the memory would cause if you let yourself feel it. So we're not trying to feel anything right now, just thinking about how upset you would feel if you let yourself feel it. In terms of disturbance level, it should be at a 6 out of 10 or greater on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being the most disturbance possible. So just take a moment and think about what number you would rate this right now if you let yourself feel it. Okay, now I invite you to identify a positive, engaging focus. So this is a thought or memory that brings you joy. It could be a person, a place, a feeling state, like that moment when you walked into your house on your birthday and everyone yelled, "Surprise!" It could be listening to soothing music in your favorite chair. The key is that it's positive and fully engaging. So something that really lights you up, really makes you glow. Some examples include a childhood cabin, a favorite song, your goddaughter, a funny movie, graduation, making a pecan pie. In one of the advanced trainings, there was a woman who talked about how much she loved pumpkin pie and got into all the details of it, and that was her positive, engaging focus. For me, it's pecan pie. I have a bit of a sweet tooth. So it could be your dog, could be an ocean beach near your home, could be a euphoric feeling state, or a time you laughed until you cried with your best friend, or the awareness that you are loved. So just take a few moments now to come up with a positive, engaging focus. One note, please keep your eyes open for the rest of the exercise. The reason for this will become obvious, but I mention it now because it's important that they stay open. Okay, so I'm going to pat my legs about like this. So go ahead and pat your legs along with me. So we're just going back and forth, right, left, right, left. So just keep doing this, just tapping on one leg, then the other, about like this. And now I want you to call to mind your positive, engaging focus and all the feelings that come with it as you continue to pat your legs. Now, when I say flash, I'd like you to blink 3 times quickly. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Good. Keep patting on your legs like I am while thinking of your positive, engaging focus. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Good. Let's stay with that positive, engaging focus and deepen it. Really feel it. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Good. What do you see, smell, taste, touch, and hear as you think of it? Flash, blink, blink, blink. Good. Just really get into that. What do you notice as you think about that positive focus? Flash, blink, blink, blink. Good. Think about what makes this such a special place, person, activity, or memory. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Okay, so now we'll pause for a moment and check in with the original trauma memory you came up with. Just think to yourself, what's different about it now? Okay, so back to your positive, engaging focus. Just sink into that. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Focusing all your attention and energy on this special person, place, thing, or activity. Flash, blink, blink, blink. What emotions come up as you think of this? Joy, excitement, peacefulness. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Are there certain pleasant thoughts or images that go with this positive, engaging focus? Just notice those. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Sink into it a little bit longer. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Great. Okay, so we'll pause again. So thinking about the original memory, notice what's different about it now. Okay, so back to the positive, engaging focus. Just let your mind drift on the blissfulness of the thoughts of it. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Stay with it. Yep. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Good. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Feeling that positive focus throughout your body and mind. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Great. Staying with it a little bit longer. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Okay, great. So let's pause and notice when you think about the original memory, what number would you give it now? 0 to 10, with 10 being the most disturbing, 0 not at all. Ask yourself, what makes it as much as this number? So if it's a 3, what makes it as much as a 3? If it's a 5, what makes it as much as a 5? Okay, so let's spend a little bit more time with your positive, engaging focus. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Feel it with all your being. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Good. Just staying with that. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Enjoying the pleasure that this positive, engaging focus brings you. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Great. Flash, blink, blink, blink. Okay. So one last time, checking in about the original memory, what number would you give it now? So just thinking about that number. Okay. That is it. That is the flash technique. So thank you for joining on that little adventure. And I'd love to hear, I have certain questions I can ask. I'd love to hear your experience. I also encourage you, as I mentioned, I don't need to know what the traumatic memory was. Just noticing kind of how you responded to it, anything that stood out for you. And I can ask some more specific follow-up questions, but I'd like to start sort of open-ended. So yeah, whoever would like to start, you can unmute yourself and be our courageous first participant.
I'll be courageous.
All right, thanks, Eileen.
And I'm interrupt me if I'm saying too much. I identified something that had happened when I think I was in junior high or high school, and I was surprised at how much emotion it still generated, and I rated it at a 7. And I was kind of surprised. It's like, I'm 64 years old. How can this be? And then my positive engaging focus was a cat that passed away several years ago, and I just loved her so much. But once I started using it, I realized that sadness was coming up. And so I thought, no, I'm not going to use that. So I switched to the cat that I have now that I love dearly. And then I was able to focus on purring and warmth and affection and all of these things. And then after the first round, hang on one second. Pardon me. After the first round, I rated the traumatic event at maybe at a 4. And then after the second round, it's like I almost couldn't find it anymore. I had to stop and think, what was it I was trying to focus on here? And then I found it, and I thought, okay, so maybe it's like a 2 now. And then we went through it, I think, the third time, and then it got down to like a 1. And you said to ask, why am I still feeling it at that level? And my thought was, because I know it happened, but it really doesn't have much of a charge left. So.
Wow. Well,
I know.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that is so cool to go from a 7 to a 1 over the course of that time. Phil talks about how the flash technique is a neurobiological phenomenon. And basically so he's fully confident, and I understand why, that it works. If there's a reason that it didn't work, then we just kind of troubleshoot what that is. And Eileen, you right off the bat, you came up against one of the reasons why it might not work is if it's not a fully engaging, positive engaging focus. So that is, and then you did exactly, if we were sitting together and you made that comment to me in individual therapy, I would have had the feedback of, okay, well, do you feel that you can set aside the sadness, or is it better to choose another focus? And you just spontaneously chose another focus, which was great. And so that was really cool how you did that. And it's interesting too, how you noticed how the number came down kind of gradually. And so it sounds like it was a success for you. And also what came up too, which is interesting, which I know as you know, fellow EMDR folks, that this is wouldn't come as a surprise to us, right? But thinking about that number, a traumatic memory that happened so long ago that still really affects us when we think about it. And of course, understanding, oh, well, that's in a certain neural network that's kind of stayed static. It wasn't processed like a normal memory. So it makes sense when you reflect on it now, even if it was, 40, 50, 60 years ago, that it would still kind of have that charge. So really fascinating. Yeah.
I almost felt tearful at the end. I thought, wow, why haven't I EMDR'd myself before? On this particular event, I've been just toting it around all these years without even really realizing that it was back there. So thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for getting us started. Yeah. So anyone else who would like to share?
So I had very similar experience. I took up a memory where I fell off the horse. We have this place called Kashmir in India.
Oh,
And
yes.
it was raining very heavily. I'm an EMDR practitioner myself, and we had gone there for EMDR project, a research project. And we had gone up the mountains on a horse, and I fell off the horse and I banged my head on the very big rock. And I don't know how I was protected, but I got saved. And when you spoke about bringing up the memory, that's the first thing that came. And I was surprised that it was still disturbing. And the disturbing part was that how idiotic of me to just go up there, leaving my two kids behind. I've got two wonderful kids here. And I thought I had processed it, but I hadn't when we were speaking. And I said, oh my God, I'm so apprehensive. What if I have a meltdown here on the screen right now? I'm like, it's okay, let it be. It happens, like, let it process. But as soon as you started speaking about the positive networks, and we started talking about the positive images and sensations, and it was about my children and their presence and the good time we have, and I made brownies today and a lot of things, I started realizing that those disturbing memories of me by being on the horse and falling started diminishing. And it was amazing when it was happening to me, So I understand now what my clients experience in EMDR when they say that this memory is no longer disturbing. So thank you, Brad. This was a wonderful experience, and it was so quick. I could literally see the shift, and I was noticing, is it real? It's not disturbing me anymore. It's 6 and it's becoming 4, and is it even real? I was going on checking, but I'm sure my brain will not lie. So the focus was completely on the lovely sensations, the peace. I could smell my brownies when you spoke about the smell. So the whole experience was really awesome. Thank you. This was such a good learning as well as a felt experience, I can say. So that's my bit.
Well, thank you so much.
With gratitude.
Yeah, well, thank you. And gratitude to you for sharing and for joining us. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. Eileen had mentioned something about the original memory feeling further away. And often that's something that Phil talks about is that when it's working, people often will feel a distance between themselves and that memory. And it sounds like that was a little bit of kind of what you experienced, where it was like, at first I'm like surprised, oh my gosh, it's right here kind of in my face. And then as you're engaging more with the positive engaging focus, it's maybe doesn't feel quite as right in your face. It's more like, oh, that happened. Yes, I'm aware that it happened, but it's not like part of me, or I am not that. I don't know if that resonates with you or not, Seema.
Absolutely. Like I said, it was like a shield between me and that memory. When we spoke about bringing up the traumatic memory, I was apprehensive, Brad. I was like, this happened in 2015. I don't believe it's still bothering me, So when I was rating on scale of 0 to 10, it was around, I cannot say 8, 9, it was 6, but it was giving me a very nervous, apprehensive feeling that, I fell off the horse. So my negative belief would be I could have died. But as soon as you started taking us on the positive, thoughts, images and sensations, that became smaller and smaller. And I could experience that. I was completely focused, completely engaged with the positive neural network, I think. So this was here, like you said, it was not going anywhere, but it was not disturbing. I was no longer engaging with it, is what I felt, So yeah, it makes sense.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. It's really interesting to hear that, right? And yeah, one thing that's kind of interesting is, we only really need to bring the traumatic memory very briefly into our minds. And so for me, a little bit of a challenge of doing it with a group is to say, well, I want to be specific and help people choose the right memory. But in doing that, we end up spending a little bit more time on the traumatic memory than research has shown is most effective. The ideal amount is like, boom, it's in your head. 99% we're on the positive engaging focus. So it's kind of a little bit of a trade-off. So I hear what you're saying as far as like, at first, well, it was really strong, and maybe even to the point of like, geez, like, this is kind of a lot. And I think the truth is it would have really been a lot. And so even though I can instruct, well, if you were to feel it and try to create some distance, it's still in our mind somewhere, and we're fully, even if it's not for a long time, we're fully engaged with that trauma. So it is kind of an interesting balance. But that's really cool to hear that you were really able to find that positive, engaging focus and really lean into it. And like, the 5 sense engagement. I mean, that's really what you want with clients, is get them there. And, when I'm working with individual clients, which is typically how I do the flash technique, I'm there, I write down their description of it, and then I'm repeating it back to them. Same thing I do with peaceful place and container. I really extend it out. I'll spend 60 minutes on a peaceful place, on a container, because I want them to live this, and so that's what's cool, is where here I'm saying, it's more abstract. Think of your, the smell, the sound, really connect with it. What emotions does it bring up? With a client, I know what emotions it brought up because I asked and they told me, right? And they're describing it. And so it's really a dialogue when I'm doing it with clients. It's, oh yeah, tell me about your granddaughter. Oh man, she just gets this look on her face. Yeah, flash, blink, blink. What's her name? Man, I'll bet the day she was born was one of your favorite days, huh? Oh, the day she was born, and so you're just going all way down the rabbit hole with people. And it's really fun. And because you're also getting the bilateral stimulation as a therapist, so you're really resonating and attuning in a different way with your client. So yeah, I don't know if Kelly or Elspeth, if either of you are interested in sharing your experience.
Yeah, really powerful experience. Thank you very much. Just to reiterate what Eileen and Seema have said, just in such a short amount of time, I went from a 7 to a 4 and then a 2 on something that happened about 10 years ago, I think. And I think what made it maybe a sensitive thing to think about was it happened on my birthday. So to go to a 2 with that is really impressive. And I recalled, I guess, a period of time that we may all reflect on back in our 20s, when we have no responsibilities or less responsibilities, a period of traveling, and the people that I met, especially in the Czech Republic, where I was spending some time and just really getting into the stories, the people, the sights, the scenes, the difference. And it was just very, very powerful, more powerful than I expected it to be, actually, to spend time thinking about that. So, yeah. And also just the power of online therapy. It can work. It is face-to-face, that it can work. People have reservations about doing EMDR, whether as a therapist or as a client, but this just reinforces to me that it can be as effective as face-to-face, as in person. I mean, especially during this time.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, it sounds, what I think is so neat about your positive, engaging focus is it also taps into that human need for social connection.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What a beautiful thing. And to come down from a 7 to a 2, I mean, that's huge. And
and like Eileen, and this, I recognize this in EMDR training, when you are practicing, that you find it difficult to grasp the memory. It's distant, and it's almost like you're trying to scramble around to grab it again. And that was my experience after the first round, where we were checking in the midway suds, that I experienced that as well. Amazing. Yeah, I'm going to look into the day's training after that, I think, to know more about it and to begin to practice it more confidently. Yeah, with clients.
Wow, that's really neat. Yeah. Just noticing that, and what you said about teletherapy. I dug my heels in to start, because of course what I do is day-long sessions, 2 3-hour chunks. I mean, it just didn't translate to online. But after a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I said, okay, I need to get creative here, because the need is actually greater than usual. And so I need to get out of my nope, I'm staying the course. It's like, well, the course has changed.
And I've read, and Brad, you'll obviously know more than myself, but I've read that the flash technique works really well with dissociation. Anybody who may be tending to dissociate, it keeps them more in the present. You know, you're not touching into the traumatic memory so deeply as maybe EMDR might, that it's safer for dissociation. I don't know if that's correct.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a big part of it. And I think that is why Phil considers it to be part of the preparation phase of EMDR, in the same way that, you know, a peaceful place, some people call it a safe place or container, that it's really set up that way as something that for people who might never be able to do full EMDR processing because it's just too activating.
It's too much, yeah.
They can't stay half in the room and half in the memory. And so this is great for that. And I think,
especially with teletherapy, sorry to interrupt, especially with teletherapy where there may be an abreaction, but you can't be in the room. So I think as a therapist, I would feel safer using flash with
absolutely.
Somebody.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, with anything that we do that touches a traumatic memory, there's some risk, and I know Phil would say the same thing. But definitely, I mean, it's a great thing, especially like you said with teletherapy, where you can test it out and say, okay, I'm not physically there with the client. You know, I'm not able to really get there and ground them in the same way, and so this could be actually effective for a broader range of people because you don't necessarily know until you're really processing how someone's going to respond. And this is a way to safely dip your toe in the water and also for them to have an early success with EMDR to kind of reinforce that.
Build their confidence with it. Yeah.
There is, I actually cut and pasted a tiny little bit that I want to share with you guys because it kind of gets at the root. There was a study that was done in 2017 by a guy named Paul Siegel. And it was him and like 8 or 9 other folks, a couple folks from Southern California, a number of folks from SUNY, and I believe Columbia University as well in New York. And they have this great study. It's called Less is More, Neural Activity During a Very Brief and Clearly Visible Exposure to Phobic Stimuli. So they found that among the group that were arachnophobic, so they were exposing people to spiders in varying degrees, right? Among the group that was arachnophobic, that very brief exposure to spider images activated brain regions that support fear processing without causing them to experience the fear consciously. So whereas clearly visible exposure, where the spider comes up, they see it's a spider, that actually deactivated fear regulation and caused phobic participants to experience more fear. So it suggests that limiting the awareness of exposure to phobic stimuli through like visual masking. So you could kind of see it was a spider. It flashed up so quickly that they didn't even register that they had seen anything. That facilitates processing while also minimizing the experience of fear. So this is one of the studies that Phil cites, and to say very brief exposure, the less exposure, the better. In fact, the flash technique used to be about 20 minutes long, I believe, because there was a longer exposure to the traumatic memory, and they found actually that's not helpful. It's better the shorter that it is, you call it to mind. In fact, he actually gave an example of when a way that he does EMDR, which is a little bit different than the way I do it as part of the initial intake, is he'll do the 10 worst life experiences, have people rate them 0 to 10, and then he'll take the least upsetting out of those. So maybe say it's a 6, and he'll do flash technique on that. And then he'll go back and often find that the other memories that the person has mentioned have also come down in their SUDS. So not only is the one that he did flash technique around come down, but these other ones that weren't quote unquote directly targeted, but were in working memory in some way, also reduced. So for me, that's kind of the mind blower, even more so than, okay, bring this to mind, flash it, there's some connection. But this seems like, where does that even come from? So there are parts of the human mind that we're just starting to learn about. And so it's just fascinating. Yeah. Well, I don't know, Kelly, if you're interested in sharing. I don't want to put anybody on the spot here. Just invite you if you're interested.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to hear what everyone else had said, and there's honestly nothing more or extra that I could say that hasn't already been said, but I guess just thinking back, like an immediate traumatic memory had come in my head, and I was like, I really don't want to get that involved today. I was thinking about switching it or finding something else because I didn't want to go down that road too far. But then once we started, it became much easier to handle. And as much as I thought I wouldn't have wanted to put myself or put that in my head all over again, it just, like everyone else had said, it like lessened it. And I think what the positive engagement did was it just gave me like a sense of gratefulness that I hadn't really focused on with the positive engagement before. I just kind of saw the positive engagement as something, like you had said, fulfilling and created like a sense of peace and happiness, but I never really thought about being grateful for it. So I think when we were going through the I guess flash technique was just that, I just brought like a sense of gratefulness to the traumatic past, and it kind of just very nicely covered the trauma of the past, and I saw where I am presently grateful versus not in the past. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but yeah.
I think it does. Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like I'm hearing again sort of a distance from what happened. Maybe at the beginning it felt more kind of in your face, and then you were able to engage more with the positive engaging focus and then have sort of a sense of gratitude. It's interesting. Did you say you felt some gratitude towards the original traumatic situation as well?
In a sense, very slightly, because I think just that overall like sense of gratefulness kind of did cover both the positive as well as the negative in a way. So yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. I noticed Elspeth was nodding. I'm not sure if you had a response for Kelly.
No, definitely with the gratitude element, I think. Grateful that I was in a position to have that opportunity to travel and spend a year somewhere else. You know, not everybody has that, obviously, for very, very different reasons. But also nodding because I was thinking of the term post-traumatic growth, that with time, we can look at what we have gained from a traumatic event, whether it's a side of ourselves we didn't notice before, whether it's resilience, or it kicked us down another path which actually has been better for us, something like that. I think I was nodding because of all of that.
I would definitely nod to agree to that too.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's really interesting, right? If like looking back, I mean, I can think looking over times in my life and, certain challenges, pain is a good motivator, and pain can also be a lot of other things that aren't positive, but pain can be a good motivator to say, okay, as humans, we don't like pain. So what am I going to do to get out of it? Well, if it's not going to be drugs or alcohol or gambling or sex or fill in the blank, then I got to come up with some other way to deal with it. And if it's just there, I got to get a little bit creative. And I don't know if this exactly is kind of what you're pointing to, but that's kind of what I'm connecting with about what you've shared is sort of like I can look back on some difficult times and say, wow, without that pain, I wouldn't have done this next thing, including my own EMDR processing as a client. And that I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you guys today if it weren't for the pain of that person who I still look back on and go, I don't really like that person, but I should actually be grateful, And so I love that kind of gratitude for, wow, well, each of these things have moved me in the direction of healing ultimately. Any last questions or comments? It's been great. Yeah, Eileen?
Are you, I'm working toward EMDR certification, and I need a consultant. Are you a consultant by chance?
I am not a consultant. Nope. So I'm EMDR trained in a couple of different methods, but I'm not a consultant. So
Okay. Well, you have two areas of interest that are also my interest: addiction and gambling. Gambling's an addiction. And I thought, man, this might be the perfect guy to do a consultation with. So thank you. This has been great. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for the compliment. And it's definitely something that I love EMDR. So I'm going to continue working in that direction. I do train folks in peaceful place resourcing and container resourcing. And I have a curriculum that I am going to be putting up online. I have some work to do to get it. It's one thing to give a 7-hour training to a group who's right in front of you. It's another to get it tight to where it needs to be to have it online. But that is something down the road I'd like to do. And certainly eventually, I think to become an EMDR trainer could be great. All this kind of stuff, even preparing for the flash technique, it forces me to really study it and have a better sense of it. I do want to say I don't have any specific relationship with Phil. He's the expert. I would never pretend to be the expert on flash technique, but just today for you to get an opportunity really to kind of be clients and participants and see a little bit what it's like, and hopefully, you know, light the fire so you do get training with Phil and do that basic training. So, but thanks for asking. Yeah.
One more question. Are
Sure.
we on your mailing list now, so that if you schedule some trainings and that kind of thing, you mentioned a week-long training in Seattle, will we be advised of that?
Yeah, so my week-long offering is actually for trauma processing. So it would be us working one-on-one to work through. It could be, usually it's a combination of addiction and trauma, which often then shows up as depression or anxiety. I am planning to certainly I've kept track of folks who've reached out to let them know when this video goes live. So I am keeping track of folks in that way. So I'm happy to do that, to reach out, and then just to obviously let people know, if you don't want to hear from me, just let me know and I won't bother you. But yeah, I mean, I think the more that we can get the word out about these techniques, and especially with resourcing, yeah, flash technique, it's not something that my understanding is you do have to be trained, you know, master's level or above. The nice thing about resourcing is, yes, it can be seen as part of EMDR, but it's also its own thing. I mean, resourcing is used in hypnotherapy and all these different things. So what I love is taking something and adapting it so I can train substance use disorder counselors and mental health folks as well, gambling counselors who maybe aren't master's level, but geez, you can create a peaceful place with your client. You can do this. The more people that can provide this to their clients, I tell you, you know, doing the peaceful place, for example, I used to give quote unquote homework to clients, and you'd say, well, maybe 10% of the time they do the thing we agreed that they were going to do. And with peaceful place or container, and I say, hey, did you use it? I'd say 90% of the time they say, oh, I used it. Why? Because it's part of them now. You've done the bilateral stimulation. It's part of them. And so the same kind of thing goes with flash technique. You know, notice what your SUDS is as you think about this thing in the coming days. Typically, though, once it's down, it's down. Just like other EMDR that we do, once you've decreased the SUDS on something, barring some other major trauma or something like that that links into it, or drug use or whatever, I mean, it stays down. That's what's so cool about it. So I just love learning this. I appreciate your guys being here, and I'll definitely stay in touch, and I'll let you know when I have this posted. I just got added a page on my website that's it just says Brad on video, fairly basic, but it has a few clips. So I'm going to add, again, I haven't decided how much of this training I'm going to put on there. At minimum, I'll include the instructions, but I think it's helpful, some of the Q&A as well, for people to just be able to connect with that too. So I might end up putting both a shorter clip and a little bit longer one on there as well. So, but yeah, it's been wonderful. thank you guys so much. We're just at an hour right now, and just want to thank each of you for your participation, and feel free to use me as a resource if you have questions about this or any other EMDR related stuff. If I don't know the answer, I'll find it.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Really brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. This
Yeah.
was a wonderful meeting, everyone. And
Yeah, as well, from all over the world.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
I really didn't expect this. I thought it's going to be a big group, but I'm liking it. It's a small
it's a
group,
small
and we
group.
could connect. You know,
Yeah.
so this was
Yeah.
my personal 1 hour with you all. So this was really amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Well, thanks. That's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Goodbye, Eileen,
Bye.
Elspeth,
Take
Kelly,
Thank you very
Seema.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Take
you
care.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.